And now, the Rink Rap Podcast from Forever Blueshirts, talking all things New York Rangers hockey. Here's your host, Jim Cerny.
What's going on, Blue Shirt faithful? I'm Jim Cerny. Welcome to the Rink Rap Podcast here at Forever Blueshirts. Pleasure to be joining you again this week, especially after crimes were committed last night at Madison Square Garden that we need to talk about. And you know what? I'm kind of laughing. It's kind of an inside joke. Before I started recording the podcast, or maybe 30 seconds before I started recording, I heard all these sirens outside my window. And I don't know. One thing led to another in my crazy mind. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to talk about crimes committed at Madison Square Garden on Sunday night when the Rangers lost 2-1 to the Detroit Red Wings. So we'll have a little chat about that, about the post-game incident involving Jonathan Quick. Home road disparity continues for the Rangers. Big road trip coming up. So we're not going to do the full-blown hour here. We're going to have another podcast later in the week when the Rangers are on the road. But I did want to get to a bunch of things today, especially based off of that 2-1 loss to the Red Wings at the Garden. So let's start there. First of all, crimes committed at the Garden. Crime number one, Jonathan Quick exited the ice Sunday night at Madison Square Garden without a win. That's right. An L was hung on Jonathan Quick last night when he deserved nothing less than a W. So the crime committed is by the New York Rangers. It's by the 18 skaters that skated in front of him, okay? Jonathan Quick did everything in his power in an absolute throwback, brilliant performance for the Rangers on Sunday. Looked like they were, the way he was going, they had to win their second home game in a row at the Garden, right? The way Quickie was playing last night, you reward a goaltender that goes above and beyond like Jonathan Quick did last night. Right? And sometimes it's even more so when it's your number two guy. Like I've seen, star goalies, Henrik, back in the day, Mike Richter. Yeah, I mean, you could go through any team, and certainly Igor's dealt with this, where they stand on their head and still the team loses. Yeah, it happens. I've seen them steal more games than not. Everyone I mentioned there, again, including Igor. But it seems when the number two goalie goes out and stands on his head and pretty much single-handedly keeps you in a game and gives you that chance to win, quite often a team finds a way to reward that goalie, that number two. Now listen, Jonathan Quick isn't your typical number two. He's a 3-time Stanley Cup champion, okay? But he's 39 years old. He's going to be 40 shortly. He matched his near age with 40 saves last night at the Garden. And the Rangers did not reward him. That was the crime committed. Instead, the final two periods, especially third period, absolutely, they did less and less to win, to put themselves in a position to win the game. Jonathan Quick didn't, but the rest of his team did. I mean, the Rangers had their doors blown off of them, I thought, in the third period. And you can look at, you can list the shots on goal. You can list the shot attempts. You can go through all the analytical numbers, and you can argue this any which way you want. Eye test. Detroit owned the puck in that third period. And you can argue for the final two periods. But certainly in the final 20 minutes of that game, they owned puck. And you know what? It was still a 1-1 game with under 4 minutes to play before the Red Wings' Mason Raymond finally gave the Red Wings the goal that they needed. And Cam Talbot brought it home from there. Cam Talbot, hey, there's another name for you. Blast from the past. He brings it home. Red Wings get a 2-1 road win at the Garden. That's crime. For Jonathan Quick to play that great. I mean, he's been really good this season. but he was on a whole other level. I'd argue maybe his best game as a New York Ranger in 3 seasons with the Rangers. He was that good. And you saw it right away, like 4 or 5 minutes into the game, that really sharp, well-positioned, old school kick save. A Marco Casper breaking up ice, a 2-on-1 for the Red Wings. It's about 5 minutes into the game. It was a good shot, trying to go far side, but Quick played his angle well, stood up, kick save, just the old school, kick that puck right out of there. And there was plenty of that. He really used his pads well in this one. Like Red Wings really seemed to be going low with their shots more often than not. So it was one pad save after another. Also loved the old school Quickie getting the paddle down on the ice, getting low, getting the paddle down on the ice to make, not just one, but a string of big time saves during flurries, in tight near his crease. He was great. And he was battling his ass off too. And he was fired up. He's pissed at the officials, right? That's the other thing we're going to get to in a minute. But he's pissed at the officials. Like after that first goal, Detroit finally opens up the scoring. Raymond's shot sneaks through his pads, through Quick's pads. And then DeBrincat, just kind of nudges it over the goal line after that. Well, of course, the sequence leading up to the goal included, Dylan Larkin all over Jonathan Quick, right? Knocking him down, and Quick's got to get back up. Listen, could have been a goalie interference there. Didn't get the call. Okay. I didn't think it was black or white there. I think it could have gone either way. Certainly, Jonathan Quick was pissed. He had time. He got up. He reset himself, but he didn't look set. He's making all these great saves, and somehow Raymond is, he's got a pretty clean look on that Raymond shot. And this is in the second period. It's a scoreless game at that point, and it just leaks through his pads, and then DeBrincat finishes it off. So he was pissed. He goes after the officials there. Rangers came back. They did get a power play goal from Mika Zibanejad to tie this one up. But boy, oh boy, Rangers couldn't get through the neutral zone on a consistent basis. Couldn't consistently, keep going north-south. Couldn't win puck battles below the dots at either end of the ice. So they really had limited offensive zone time. They spent, almost that entire third period defending. As a result, less scoring opportunities, less shots on goal, less chances to help out their goalie, who was unreal in this one. So that's crime number one. Jonathan Quick skates off the ice without a victory. Crime number two, perpetual crimes by referee Kelly Sutherland and the officials. Listen, I know they have a tough job. And you very rarely hear me come on here one way or the other saying Rangers were screwed or, Rangers, got away with murder last night, with the officiating. I typically am not one to ride the officials, but it was a rough night, I thought, for the officiating. And it showed up in the box score. Red Wings had 5 power plays. Rangers had 2. Certainly that played some role in the Red Wings, their momentum. They had, I think they had 14 shots on goal or something like that on the power play, 14 or 15. I forget the number. But that's a lot. They had 40 shots on goal in the game, or 42. And 14, 15 or so come on the power play. That's a high percentage. And man, a lot of grade A's on the power play. And Jonathan Quick, head and shoulders, was the Rangers' best penalty killer. Though, I do want to shout out Mika Zibanejad, good stick defensively, made a couple of really good plays on the PK. Ditto for Vladislav Gavrikov, who had a little bit of an up and down. Had some turnovers, but on the PK, I thought he was really strong. So anyway, Detroit has 5 power plays. Rangers have only 2. So you have that discrepancy. And the 2 most egregious mistakes, I thought, were the Sam Carrick holding the stick penalty in the second period. I was like, kidding me? Really? Really? Watch the sequence. Okay. And You don't even need the Dave Maloney soundtrack to go with it. Dave's losing his mind on the broadcast to know that that's not a penalty. Rangers killed that one off. But again, it's a momentum thing, having the man advantage for Detroit. Then the other egregious mistake, and going back to the crimes theme, crimes committed at the Garden last night. That too many men on the ice for the Red Wings, third period. You kidding me? You gotta call that. And it wasn't just a quick one. Oh, they've got 6 men on the ice. Let's call it, blow the whistle, penalty. No, it's like it was for a substantial stretch. So Kelly Sutherland, the officials, crimes committed. Rangers not getting Jonathan Quick a W, crimes committed. And guess what? The one thing that, I don't know, I'd argue maybe wasn't a crime is the thing that led to all 40 players on the ice after the game in a post-game. Everybody wants to call it a brawl. Maybe I'm too old school to think that was a brawl. But yeah, you had all 40 guys on the ice because Jonathan Quick, who is on the bench in the final couple minutes of the game, obviously Rangers pull him down 2-1, sixth attacker on, trying to get a goal. Red Wings, by the way, iced it 3 times down the stretch. Rangers had a lot of opportunities, win face-off, control the puck, offensive zone, and try and tie the game, and they just were unable to. But okay. So finally, the Red Wings clear it out in the closing seconds of the game. Mason Appleton's up on right wing, and he's in a puck battle. He doesn't have a clear look at the net. He doesn't have clear possession, and the buzzer does go off. Clearly, the buzzer goes off, and Appleton sends the puck into the empty net. Now, there are some people I've seen on X, on social media, losing their minds about Mason Appleton firing the puck into the empty net to rub salt in the wounds on the Rangers, especially at Madison Square Garden. Okay. I didn't see it that way. Like, yes, it was after the buzzer. Yes, I can understand Jonathan Quick sitting on the bench after standing on his head the entire game, and then seeing that. And he's an old school guy, right? And old school says, you shoot it into the empty net after the buzzer, you're going to have to stand up for that. But again, people make it sound like it was, 10 seconds after that buzzer went off, or even 5 seconds after that buzzer went off. It wasn't. The buzzer went off, and right after that, he's shooting it towards the empty net. I didn't think it was that big a deal, but I love the fire of Jonathan Quick. He comes charging off the bench. He's trying to get at Mason Appleton. He's pissed. Like I said, he's an old school guy, man. You don't do that. Okay, again, I think it's a little gray area here. I also think that the goalie was so frustrated by the outcome of this one. Plays his best game, I think, as a Ranger, and his team doesn't come through in front of him. They don't come through for him. They don't win this game for him. I think he was pissed. Now, afterwards, he's asked that direct question post-game. Were you angry at the incident, Mason Appleton? Or were you upset with how the game went, the result, another loss at the Garden? He wasn't asked specifically, are you mad at your teammates, but are you frustrated, right? Was it frustration? And Quick, listen, I'll take him at his word, saying, no, they're two separate things. What set me off was Appleton. You don't do that. You saw it. You don't do that. Okay. I take him at his word. I'm not sure that he's being 100% honest there. Again, if it was 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 7 seconds, 10 seconds, yeah, whatever, after that buzzer goes off and Appleton, has the puck and then fires it into the empty net, yeah, I get it. Be pissed too. And I would hope somebody on the ice for the Rangers would beat Jonathan Quick to the punch, literally, with Mason Appleton. But again, you saw the Rangers weren't really reacting to Appleton when the puck went into the empty net because it just didn't seem that egregious. And I know I'm going to piss off some Ranger fans here. Say, oh, what are you saying? It was a terrible, blah, blah, blah. And then there are other people that will agree. They think, I saw a lot of emojis on Twitter that not so much Ranger fans, they might be Ranger haters or Jonathan Quick haters or whatever, with the crying emoji. And, listen, I don't get caught up in that kind of stuff. But I will say, I love the fire of Jonathan Quick. Okay. Argue it one way or the other. No matter why he's frustrated or he's angry at Appleton, combination thereof, love the fire. Comes off the bench and then everybody's on the ice. A couple players ended up down on the ice. Quickie, by the way, couple blockers to the face of Dylan Larkin there. You got to love that. Larkin stepped in between Quick and Appleton and for his troubles got a couple blockers to the face. That was old school. But, like Brandon London today, I was on his show on the New York Post and he said, what'd you think about the Brawl? Let's talk about the Brawl. Forget about hockey. And I said, Brawl. Now, come on, man. Brawl. That's what used to happen in the NHL. I don't know. I call this a brawl. This is more like, in baseball, when the bench is clear and everybody picks, somebody and holds them off. And, there might be one or two guys that are really pissed, but everybody else is, all right, I got to jog in from the bullpen. I'm going to find me a relief pitcher to just put my arms around and we'll watch, we'll spectate. This was sort of more that than it was traditional hockey brawl. But in any case, so that's why I say, that was not a crime committed, at least in my book. It maybe a small misdemeanor crime by Appleton, right? But I love the fire of Jonathan Quick, and I love the way he played yesterday, and I love the way he's played this year. That's an X factor for the New York Rangers, because last season Rangers were not good defensively. We know that, right? And you saw as such, I think Igor Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick, their final numbers showed the weariness of playing behind a terrible defensive team last year. So I think it showed up in the goalie numbers. I thought they were weary playing behind that defense all year. The Rangers have been much better defensively this season. They were not good defensively against the Red Wings, but they have been really good. And I think Quick has benefited from that. But I also believe individually, Jonathan Quick is much sharper than he was a year ago. Go back, compare games, watch tapes. He had his moments last year. He had a good start. He had some other moments along the way, but he didn't have that level of consistency that we saw his first season on Broadway in 23-24. We're seeing more of that this season from Jonathan Quick. And superlatives. Can't throw enough flowers his way for how he played on Sunday night. But another home loss. So the Rangers are now 1-7-1 on home ice this season. 1-7-1. And we're going to get a little bit into that when we come back after the break. We'll also take a look at the upcoming road trip. Hallelujah. 3-game road trip, right? That's the best thing that could happen. Rangers are 9-1-1 on the road this season. We'll break that down a little bit as well. And also share something that Neil Smith said on this podcast last week that I'd like to touch on. And also a quick thought or two about Gabe Perreault being sent to the minors, Scott Morrow being recalled. We'll get to all of that when we return. This is Rink Wrap at Forever Blue Shirts. Welcome back to Rink Wrap at Forever Blue Shirts. I'm Jim Cerny. Thanks for tuning in. And reminder, you can catch us on YouTube at the Forever Blue Shirts YouTube page. You can catch the podcast wherever you tune into your audio podcast. So Apple, we're part of the Odyssey network. So make sure to continue to follow us, like and subscribe. That's awesome as well. Please do that for us as well. Follow us on social media, on X. Almost forgot. I call it Twitter. I call it X. It's both, right? Follow us on social media at Forever Blue Shirts. Whoops. There we go. That's Forever Blue Shirts on X. Follow me on X at Jim Cerny. And I want to throw out this as well. It's kind of a programming note or educational note, if you will. is that along with our New York Rangers coverage, that thank you so much for following us all the time, coming to the website, populating our website, multiple stories a day, 365 days a year. Doesn't matter if we're in season, out of season. You know what we do at Forever Blueshirts. Well, our sister site is sportsnaut.com. It's an all sports website, and it's really ramping up its hockey coverage. And, in particular, we've seen some great work from James Nichols covering the New Jersey Devils, and, Mark Dumont on the Montreal Canadiens. And it really a lot of opportunity to incorporate the Hockey Now websites onto Sportsnaut. So to that end, a fellow you're probably familiar with from Rangers coverage, Lou Orlando, and I, we are also kicking off coverage of the PWHL this season. It's something that I did a little bit of a couple years ago, but then really, really focused on the Rangers since. But we're not cutting back on Rangers coverage, but Sweet Lou and I are going to be continuing or picking up is a better way to put it, picking up our PWHL coverage. We spent quite a bit of time at New York Sirens training camp last week. We've already got a few stories up on the site again, sportsnaut.com/PWHL. And that is the PWHL Now page. So we've been populating that and getting that up and running. And we're going to be attending practices and, games, and we'll have analysis. And New York Sirens in particular, man, they're going to be an intriguing team to watch. And if you're a PWHL fan, you know this. They kind of cleared house this offseason. 4 of their top 5 goal scorers are no longer on the team. They have gone really young, building around consecutive first overall draft picks last year and this year, led by Sarah Fillier. But you also have Calty in there, and O'Brien drafted this year, and Cherkowski drafted this year. I mean, there's so much great young talent. So anyway, we're going to be doing a lot of Sirens coverage, in particular, and PWHL coverage over at Sportsnaut. So make sure to follow me and Sweet Lou at Sweet Lou Orlando this coming season for the PWHL. They kick off their season Saturday. The Sirens do in Ottawa, a road game against the Charge. Okay, back to the Rangers. So Rangers hit the road this week. They're 9-1-1 on the road. They've won 6 in a row on the road. Their longest road winning streak since the 2019-20 season. They have been outstanding. In fact, it's been season saving what the Rangers have done on the road so far. And Jekyll and Hyde is a good way to talk about it. Neil Smith joined me on the podcast last week. We referred to it as the Jekyll and Hyde Rangers. And as poorly as they played at home, or how poorly the results have gone at home, because they have played some really good games that they just lost at the Garden. But let's just talk results-wise. 1-7-1 at the Garden, 9-1-1 on the road. So as poorly as the results have gone at home, they've been outstanding on the road. Only the Los Angeles Kings have more points on the road than the Rangers. They're 9-1-2, so they played one more road game than the Rangers have. They're 9-1-2. Rangers are 9-1-1. And they were coming off Saturday night, I thought one of their best wins of the season. Because I thought the Columbus Blue Jackets, really good offensive team, really good 5-on-5 team, and the Rangers just neutralized them. Like, they threw the blanket on them. Columbus just couldn't get through the neutral zone, couldn't get clean entry over the Rangers' blue line. And that was because the Ranger forwards were engaged defensively, and their defensemen were aggressive, had a strong night in front of Igor Shesterkin. Man, it was the blueprint. Now, the Rangers didn't generate a ton 5-on-5 themselves, but they were confident because they knew that they were playing a solid defensive game. So it was 1-1 through 60 minutes, 1-1 through 65 minutes, and then, of course, JT Miller won it in the shootout for the Rangers. I thought it was one of their most complete games of the season. Mike Sullivan said as much afterward as well. So for them then to come back and just not do the things that they did to shut down Columbus, basically be outwilled by Detroit, not create those turnovers in the neutral zone, let Detroit fly into the offensive zone. Then when they were in the offensive zone, I mean, Detroit just pinned the Rangers in their own end over and over, shift after shift. Win puck battles left and right. Rangers did it to Columbus the night before on the road. They come home, and Detroit did it to them at Madison Square Garden. So if you remember last week's podcast interview with Neil Smith, Neil used this great phrase. He said, when things, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I've got the phrase he absolutely said, when things aren't going well for the Rangers at Madison Square Garden, it's a snake pit. And I wrote that as a story today. It's a snake pit. And I know exactly what he means. And I'm not ripping Ranger fans or whatever. That's a tough place to play. New York's a tough city to play in. It's a demanding fan base that the Rangers have. Nothing wrong with that. Accountability, right? But it really, really wears on the players when things are going bad. So Neil's point last week was that he's not surprised that a tough start at home has become a historically bad start at home. Because any team, it's hard to get back on track, once you're on a losing streak or you're in a slump, an individual slump, a collective slump, whatever it is, right? It's hard to pull yourself out of that. And it's hard to do at home. Nobody likes to be booed at home. Nobody likes when it's silent at home. That's worse than the booing. When the fans are just sitting on their hands because you're not giving them any reason to react one way or the other. And there's been a lot of that at the Garden this season, offensively, in particular. Right? Not all these losses they played terribly. In fact, I argue that quite a few of these losses that the Rangers have been the better team. They just haven't been able to score. They've been shut out 5 times at the Garden. 7 of their 9 home games, they've scored 1 goal or fewer, including Sunday night in the loss to Detroit. 1-7-1 at the Garden. Snake pit when it goes badly, says Neil Smith. And listen, he knows, right? The end of his tenure, when the Rangers weren't very good, I mean, those teams were booed off the ice routinely at Madison Square Garden. How about 93-94? 92-93. My apologies. The year before the Rangers ended their 54-year Stanley Cup drought. Rangers were coming off the President's Trophy win in 91-92. They had the Hart Trophy winner, Mark Messier, the reigning Hart Trophy winner, Mark Messier, reigning Norris Trophy winner, Brian Leetch. It was all there for them. At worst, they were a playoff team, if not, again, a serious Stanley Cup contender. They didn't make the playoffs that year. Everything that could go wrong went wrong, right? I know we drew the comparisons of that team to last season's Rangers team, right? We've done that often on this show. I remember the final home game and games leading up to that one, but certainly the final home game at the Garden that season. The fans were booing almost beginning to end. They were so pissed at the Rangers. Mark Messier, every time he touched the puck, you heard boos. As they skated off the ice, they headed into the offseason with a cascade of boos. To Neil Smith, to the players, snake pit. And over the years, in my years covering the New York Rangers, I've had many a player tell me there is no better place to play as your home arena than Madison Square Garden when things are going well. But man, we don't want to be there when it's not going well. That's tough. That comes with New York, right? That's why not everybody succeeds in this city. And, we're talking Rangers specifically, but, Mets, Yankees, Jets, Giants, Knicks. It's not just the Rangers, but yeah, specifically the Rangers. So anyway, I wrote that story. It's on the Forever Blueshirts website right now. kind of delving into all that. Neil Smith calling it a snake pit at the Garden when things aren't going well. So the road trip's coming up. It's a tough one. Starts in Vegas on Tuesday night. Vegas, listen, perennially one of the better teams in the league. Now have Mitch Marner. Carter Hart won't be in their lineup just yet, but he played his first AHL game, so he's on the comeback. So they fortified their goaltending. It's a good team. I think they've lost quite a bit on defense. That's still a great team. Jack Eichel, Mitch Marner, winning pedigree, great coach. So they start there on Tuesday. And Thursday, they go to Denver to take on the Colorado Avalanche, who right now have one regulation loss on the season. They're tops in the NHL in the overall standings. Deep as hell lineup. Really good goaltending. I mean, they're the Colorado Avalanche. They're playing great hockey. So you got them. And then you close it out in Utah against the Mammoth, who have a better points percentage than the Rangers, but roughly the same record as the Rangers. But again, not an easy out, not an easy W on the road for the Rangers in Utah to close out that trip. So that's a really difficult road trip coming up. So they'll be challenged. Then they come back home and they close out the month with 2 home games, 2 road games. Then December comes for the Rangers. They play 6 of their first 8 games, 7 of their first 10 in the month of December at Madison Square Garden. And that could be make or break for them, right? Got to think at some point they come back to earth a little bit on the road, even if they continue to play great on the road, right? You can't keep up this 9-1-1 type pace on the road. So they got to start winning at home if they're going to be a playoff team. They can't keep offsetting, these great road trips and great play on the road with lack of production and not getting points on home ice. Beginning of December. December's a key month for the Rangers, no matter what happens on this road trip. But it becomes, arguably, the beginning of December becomes even more important if the Rangers lose 2 out of 3 on this road trip. I'm not saying they're going to, but if they do, then you better really start winning your games at Madison Square Garden. So keep an eye on that. Beginning of December, 6 out of 8, 7 out of 10 to open the month will be home games at Madison Square Garden, where they just can't get out of their own way right now. Okay. Another quick thought. Gabe Perreault was sent to the minors. He lasted a week in the NHL. Ironically, the 3 games he played, the Rangers won, including their only win on home ice this season. They had that win and then the 2 road wins that followed. He picked up his first NHL point. That assist on Alexis Lafreniere's power play goal against the Predators last Monday. Looked good that game. Looked like he belonged. He went to the dirty areas. We saw him in front of the net. He had a really good look that he shoveled wide of the net. Almost had his first NHL goal. Liked what I saw. Got a good opportunity. Skated with JT Miller and Mika Zibanejad. Got some power play time on the second unit. And then it was clear that the coaching staff didn't necessarily like his all-around game as the week progressed. The Rangers still won those games. A couple road wins there. Tampa Bay and Columbus. But it was declining ice time for Gabe Perreault. He was under 13 minutes in each of those games. When each of those games finished, Will Cooley had been bounced up to play with Miller and Zibanejad. And Gabe Perreault was back in the bottom 6. Not exactly the spot where they want him. But he didn't finish those games in the top 6. So he was sent back to the minors on Sunday. And, Mike Sullivan had talked about Gabe Perreault with Vince Mercogliano on Saturday. He answered a question about him and basically harped on the defensive game, the physical game, why it's so difficult for a young player, even one as offensively gifted as Gabe Perreault, to succeed in the NHL. Now, and this is a kind of a side shot here, going off track just a little since I mentioned Sully. Sully was not behind the bench Sunday. Now, the Rangers had already sent Gabe Perreault back down to the minors Sunday morning. So Johnny Brodzinski replaced him in the lineup. Will Cooley remained in the top 6. So Sully couldn't speak to the final decision to send Perreault back down. But David Quinn, how ironic was that, seeing Quinn doing the post-game press conference, former Rangers coach, now back as an assistant, and was co-coach in Sully's absence on Sunday. Sully is with his family for personal reasons. Nobody's giving much information here, but obviously he and his family are dealing with something right now. So our thoughts are with him and his family, and hope that he's doing okay. His family's doing okay. But, there's David Quinn post-game answering questions, just as he did, whatever it was 5-6 years ago as Rangers head coach. But he addressed the decision to send Perreault down and talked about the tough adjustment to the league, called this, it's a man's league. And basically the intonation is Gabe Perreault's got to toughen up a little bit, toughen up and get stronger, probably get stronger more than get tougher. Again, Perreault doesn't shy away from hits, doesn't shy away from, getting into the dirty areas. He just doesn't win a lot of those battles. He's got to get stronger. He's still slight of frame, and he still can offer a lot to your offense. There's a lot there with Gabe Perreault. There's a great starting point with Gabe Perreault offensively. But get sent down to the minors, a little bit more seasoning, more regular ice time, power play, top 6 minutes, hopefully playing 18, 19, 20 minutes a night with the Wolfpack, where, by the way, he has played very well. Even though he's missed 5 games for the Wolfpack, he still leads them with 5 goals and 10 points on the season. He's been their best player, 10 points in 9 games. So the decision, I think, was, I don't have a problem with it. If the Rangers do not believe that he was quite up to playing consistently top 6 minutes, put him back in the minors for another stretch. I don't want to see him buried there all year, and I don't think the Rangers would do that. There's a lot there with Gabe Perreault. He's a player. But I get it. Keep getting acclimated to the pro game. I know fans hate hearing this, and even as a member of the media, I hate hearing this. Every time a player or a coach in particular, or front office executive says, it's a process. But you know what? They're right. This is a process. This is the process for Gabe Perreault. So he goes down. Played 3 games, played 5 late last season. He's got 8 games of NHL experience now. He's going to be back. He's going to be back. They're not shutting the door on him. And hand in glove with that is Scott Morrow was called up from the minors, took Perreault's spot. I know Morrow's a defenseman, but he took Perreault's spot on the roster with Will Borgen out, missing his 2nd straight game. Was in the lineup, an all-rookie 3rd pairing with Matt Robertson on the left and Scott Morrow on the right. Quinn was asked a direct question about Morrow and said he thought he played pretty well. Now, Morrow only logged 9.5 minutes of ice time. So he didn't play a lot. They picked their spots with Morrow and Robertson. Again, in a 1-goal game, they really leaned heavily, the Rangers did, on their top 4 defensemen. Also add to the mix, as we touched on earlier, Rangers were on the PK 5 times in the game. So even in allowing a power play goal, that's still almost 10 minutes of time where Scott Morrow's not going to be out there. His first shift was almost a disaster. He got caught at the opposing blue line, and that led to the Marco Kasper rush up ice, the 2-on-1 for the Red Wings. But Quickie bailed out the rookie. And I thought after that, I thought Morrow was fine. I can't say he did anything great, but he didn't do anything egregiously poorly. Again, he moves the puck really well. He's super confident. You see him, especially when he skates along, the opposing blue line. He's got the puck, sizing it up, whether it's on the power play, second power play unit, or 5-on-5. He's got a good feel there. He is super confident with the puck, and I love to see that. And it becomes important because Matthew Schneider, going back a few years there, Braden Schneider, I don't think has excelled as a quarterback of the second power play unit. Scott Morrow could be that guy. And I think the Rangers envision him to be that guy at some point. Schneider's going to continue to be that guy because I don't know how long Scott Morrow is going to be here. I don't know how long a leash he has, especially when, Borgen is healthy and comes back. And listen, Morrow still has plenty to work on in his defensive game. Different from Gabe Perreault, other than the fact that they play different positions, is that Morrow's bigger and stronger. He's 6'2", 210, 212. He's a big, strong guy. But he still has to get better defensively, especially at the NHL level. Anyway, so we got a taste of him. We'll see what happens. Obviously, we'll wait and see if Will Borgen comes back to the lineup this week and what that means for Scott Morrow. Maybe he ends up heading back to the minors. It's a long road trip, though. So I would expect the Rangers to continue with the 23-man roster. Right now, they would have 2 extra forwards, right? Nope. Yes, 1 extra forward. The guy got to get this right. Yes, because Brodzinski came in, Parsonen was the extra forward, and then the Rangers had 2 extra defensemen, Borgen, who was injured with the upper body injury, and Urho Vakanainen, who was a healthy scratch on Sunday. So right now they're sitting at 23, and I guess they can decide, will we go west? Well, they've already gone west at this point, but we don't know who's on the trip. Will we go west with 2 extra defensemen, or will we go west with 2 extra forwards? And of course, Scott Morrow's fate kind of hangs in the balance with that. So big road trip coming up. We're probably going to come back at you with another podcast later in the week. Let's see what's going on. Working on a pretty good guest for later in the week, one that you'll be certainly happy to hear from, should we be able to finalize things with him. So let's keep the window open. I think we're going to probably come back with another podcast later this week. But thanks for tuning in to Rink Wrap at Forever Blue Shirts. Make sure to like and subscribe here. And also make sure to head to the Forever Blue Shirts website as we keep you up to date on all things New York Rangers. And as I said, Sweet Lou and I kind of double dipping here, also covering the PWHL and the New York Sirens. So follow us over at sportsnaut.com/PWHL for coverage there. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have yourself a great day. Rangers back at it Tuesday night. Cheers.